Hi, everybody. Welcome again to our reading of the book of Genesis. And if you've been following along through the pandemic and we've been doing Wednesday night readings, deeper readings in different books, most of the books we have done are much smaller than the book of Genesis. And so we've been basically reading every verse of those books and then kind of just analyzing, offering some thoughts. Not anything really in depth, but just offering some thoughts on what the writers, the apostles, the prophets are teaching us, telling us about our life of following God. The book of Genesis is quite different. It's a much larger book, and I think it would be not to our advantage if I read every verse. Either we'd be doing Genesis for 5 or 6 years, or you'd find each session very lengthy and difficult to follow. And so as we've been doing, I've been just reading a portion of every chapter, and I'm hoping that you're going to take the time, if you want to read the entire chapter. And it's a great book. It teaches us so many things about following God in faith, and the foundation of much of the Bible's story is found in the book of Genesis. And so we would encourage you, if you have any questions, any thoughts, to contact us. You can call me at 519-995-4189 or email me at westsidewindsorcoc@gmail.com. And I want to remind everyone that we are open for business on Sunday mornings at 11 at 2255 Totten Road, as well as Tuesday evenings for the fall term anyways at 7:30 p.m. for a Bible study at the Westside Church of Christ here in Windsor, Ontario. So we're following the story of Jacob. Jacob, along with his mother, have worked to deceive both Jacob's father and his brother. Jacob has, unfortunately, resorted to helping God out, like we've seen in his grandfather Abraham's life as well, where God had promised Jacob many great things, but Jacob instead resorts to trickery and stealing, and unfortunately he pays a hefty consequence for trying to achieve God's blessings in ungodly ways. But we're also reminded that God can still work good even when men have proposed evil. And this is one of the themes of the book of Genesis, actually, is that the overriding good purposes of God will come through. And so that's another message I hope we get in the life of faith. It's not an excuse to do evil. It's simply an encouragement that God can still be good. So chapter 31 is where we're at. Jacob has gone to his uncle Laban's house, and Laban, like his sister Rebekah, Jacob's mother, has been deceptive. And Jacob has had to work a long, hard road to get the wife he loved, which was Rachel. He was stuck with a wife he didn't want to have, named Leah, and then we saw last week the dysfunction beginning in that family with 4 different mothers and 11 different children so far. A 12th is going to come, or 11 different sons anyways. A 12th is going to come. Chapter 31, we get the story where Jacob is going to have to leave Laban's house and return home. And remember, the reason he's not at home is because Esau, his much more stronger and powerful brother, is very angry at Jacob for what Jacob has done and wants to kill Jacob. But he's got to go home. And then chapter 32 is his preparation to meet his brother, whom he only remembers as wanting to kill him. So chapter 31, this isn't the section we're going to read, but I'm just going to kind of set it up. Verses 1 through 3, it says, "Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying," so this is his wife's brothers, "the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has gained all this wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, Return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you." So God has been blessing Jacob. And just as Jacob has faced consequences for his deception, Laban is also facing consequences for his deception. And so Jacob is growing in prosperity, and Laban's sons and Laban himself don't look favorably on Jacob. But this is the key to the promise here. God says, when you go home, I will be with you. And this includes facing the foe that you're afraid of. I will be with you, God says, right? Okay. So we're going to read verses 36 through 42 of this section. Very long chapter. And Jacob basically goes to his wives and says, let's get going. We got to get going. This is happening. And the wives agree with Jacob. They say, like, the wealth is not our father's. It belongs to us. It belongs to you, our husband. So whatever God has told you to do, we're going to do, and we're going to go with you. Rachel has a little bit of the family DNA in her, right? And she steals her father Laban's household gods, idols, which we still might wonder, why is this still a part of Jacob's family? But it is. She steals it from her father Laban. They escape. Laban hears about this, chases after Jacob. It's kind of like Pharaoh chasing after the children of Israel, right? Because he catches up to them. He's upset with Jacob. And God has warned Laban, don't you go after him. So he says, I can't do it because God warned me in a dream. But why did you steal my idols? And Jacob goes, hey, check it out. We didn't steal your idols. Rachel comes up with a pretty clever plan. She hides them in her clothing. She says, Father, I can't get up to see you because it's, the time of woman has come upon me. And so he searches everywhere. He doesn't find the household gods. And this is when we read our text, verses 36 through 42. And even though Laban is now also being deceived, we see this, you reap what you sow, occurring over and over again in this, right? Jacob lies to Isaac and he reaps what he sows because Laban lies to Jacob. And Laban lies to Jacob and he reaps what he sows because Rachel lies to Laban. And everyone is suffering consequences for this. Beginning in verse 36. It says, Then Jacob became angry and berated Laban. And Jacob said to Laban, What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt through all my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. And we get a sense here of how difficult Jacob's life has been. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. And so Laban is that unrighteous boss, the employer, right? Landowner, changed his wages 10 times. Verse 42, listen closely. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. And I just notice the change in Jacob as he has matured these 20 years. And we sometimes wonder why we have to go through such difficult times and why there's such lengthy times. And sometimes it's a time of preparing. It's a time of maturing. It's a time of growing. We think we're so mature and so strong, and then we go through this and we come out and we realize we weren't what we thought we were. We needed to grow. And we see a lot of growth in Jacob here. If God had not been with me, you would have sent me away empty-handed. Right? God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands. And haven't we noticed with Ishmael, with Leah, don't we see this? God sees a person's affliction, and God comes through for them. God sees Hagar. God sees Ishmael. God sees Leah. And now God sees Jacob. And he comes to their aid. And this is foundational when you turn into the book of Exodus, that God saw the affliction of the children of Israel. And it's foundational for us in our faith to trust that our God is aware, our God knows, and our God is not inactive. God has come through for Jacob. I will be with you. And God is keeping his end of the promise. Laban and Jacob make a vow. They set up a pillar. No one will cross, all these different things. And Jacob swears by the God of Abraham, the fear of his father Isaac. That pushes us into chapter 32. And now in chapter 32, Jacob realizes his biggest obstacle he now must face. And the biggest obstacle from Jacob's view is his brother Esau. And Esau, we know, was a mighty hunter. Esau was much more powerful physically. But there's something about this, because Jacob, if he was truly a person of fully formed faith, would remember that Jacob was a person of promise. God has promised Jacob. God has promised about Jacob, and God has promised Jacob directly. But in chapter 32, Jacob gets tested. And Esau hears that Jacob is coming home, and Esau and 400 men are coming out to meet him. And here is Jacob, right, with his 2 wives, their 2 servants, his 11 children. Here is Jacob, right? And it is time. And Esau's coming, and Esau's a powerful hunter, and he's got 400 men with him. What's to say Esau hasn't selected 400 other powerful hunters? So Jacob is afraid. And Jacob decides to separate his family into different camps so that if one is attacked, the rest may escape. He prays to God and he reminds God of what God said. But it's also a reminder to Jacob of what God said. And Jacob has humbled himself before God. You know, he's afraid, and he does the right thing. He goes to God. And so the time is about to come. Jacob sends a gift to Esau, hoping to pacify his brother, whom Jacob knows he has cheated. So verse 22, we'll pick it up in chapter 32. The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had had. And Jacob was left alone. So he sends his children, his family, across the stream. Jacob is alone. It's this moment, right? We all need these times alone, right? Jacob is alone. And it says, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go, for the day is broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with men, and have prevailed. You wrestled with God and with men, and you have prevailed. And Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. Therefore to this day the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. Okay, so here we've got the story, fascinating story, and this is where we're going to end this evening's lesson with in chapter 32. Jacob wrestling with the angel. We know it quite well. At least we know that image. Jacob wrestles the angel. Now, putting it in its context, Jacob is about to face Esau, his mighty brother, who has vowed to kill him. What does God do? God disables Jacob. He gives Jacob a handicap for the match. This does not seem like the way you want to enter into battle. When Samson is about to go into battle, Samson becomes extremely strong. When Jacob goes into battle, Jacob is hurt. He has a limp. His hip is put out of joint. What's he going to do physically against Esau? And the answer is very little. But Jacob is determined, and he will not let go. This is a person who is full of perseverance. He is full of patience. He has what you call stick-to-itiveness, right? I will not let you go unless you bless me. And the blessing is his name, Israel. A little side note, this is why not every child of Abraham is an Israelite. Only the children of Jacob are Israelites. You could be a children of Esau, you're also a child of Abraham, but not an Israelite, you're an Edomite, and so on, right? But anyways, and the idea here is, and it's so descriptive of faith, you have wrestled with God and with men, and have prevailed. And sometimes our faith is a wrestling match. And we cling to God and will not let him go until it's clear. And this is part of faith sometimes. It's not simple all the time. It's a wrestling match. It's a striving. It's this constant urgency in prayer. You just don't see the solution, and so you hold on, you stick to it. And Jacob rises, knowing he has seen God face to face and has not been destroyed. Jacob limps on his way to meet Esau, but he is standing stronger than he thought possible. And that's going to set up for us next week, chapter 33, a marvelous moment in the life of Jacob and Esau. One that nobody would expect, not even the audience. But anyways, I hope this series of chapters has encouraged you to read some more, and maybe you, like Jacob, have wrestled in your faith before and refused to let go, but you think you're beat, but you refuse to let go. And God bless you if you're like that. To him who overcomes, Jesus says 7 times in the book of Revelation, in chapter 2 and chapter 3, to him who overcomes, to him who conquers, I will give, right? Faith is the victory that overcomes the world, John told us. God bless everyone.